Hi, today is Good Friday, the day that we remember Jesus' journey to the cross. At New Life Lutheran, our outdoor church, we usually walk the Stations of the Cross as part of our worship today. Since we're not going to be able to do that together, I wanted to show you how to do that at your own home or in your own neighborhood, or if you can, going out on your own to the land and doing it yourself today. So here's the map. They're in the mailbox at the start of the trail by the parking lot if you go to the land. If you're at home, there's a link, and it's linked in our video or it's on our website, and that is where you can download and print out this map, and it has the readings on the back. And you can make your own map at home if you'd like. If you're looking up the readings just to print them out, they're the scriptural Stations of the Cross, and you can look that up online anywhere. So, if you're doing this in your own yard and you want to set up a Stations of the Cross trail, you might look for things that match some of the reading. The first reading is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Maybe you could start at your garden. Some of the readings you might not have something that really matches it, so maybe you could just mark a place in your yard and make a cross with a stick or something else you find in nature. Some of them you might think, oh, I know where that could be. Like this one, I was thinking about Jesus being crowned with thorns, and I laid a cross in a patch of thorny thistles. That is Station 6 for me. The part where Jesus dies on the cross is at the end, 13, and you could do that at a tree or a stump. For what you can mark the stations or not. Here's one I marked as Station 9, where Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. You could make a little marker like that. Or here's the last one, which is Station 14, is where Jesus is placed in the tomb. And that one, you might want to find a stone. You can use a marker like a piece of masking tape. I marked for Station 14 on this pillar of stones we have in our yard. Now also, you could do this just walking around your neighborhood. So come with me and see how I might do that. If you were in your neighborhood, you could just walk until you found something beautiful that caught your eye. Like this lily that came up recently, and you could stop there and say Station 1, the first station, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and one person could read it in your family. You could take turns as you go, and you would keep going until you find the next remarkable thing. Maybe you could say, this fire pit, this fire pile, this burn pile looks like a good marker, and the next person could read Station 2, Jesus betrayed by Judas is arrested, and etc. You could keep going down the path or down the road and stop when you see something that catches your attention and read the next station, and walk through the 14 stations of Jesus going from the Garden of Gethsemane to Golgotha to be crucified and to the tomb. And then tomorrow will be a quiet day, and Sunday we will celebrate the day Jesus came back, the resurrection, Easter Sunday morning. What are the Stations of the Cross? Also called the Way of the Cross, the Via Dolorosa, or Via Crucis. or the way of sorrows, or just the way. The practice of walking the Stations of the Cross originated from pilgrimages to Jerusalem. The devotion of the Via Dolorosa, for which there have been a number of variant routes in Jerusalem, was probably developed by the Franciscans after they were granted administration of the Christian holy places in Jerusalem in 1342. Today, 9 of the Stations of the Cross were established by the Franciscans are located along the Via Dolorosa as it wends its way from the northwest corner of the Temple Mount to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, within which the remaining 5 stations are located. Most Roman Catholic churches, as well as many Anglican and Lutheran parishes, contain Stations of the Cross, typically placed at intervals along the side walls of the nave. In most churches, they are small plaques with reliefs or paintings, although in others they may be simple crosses with a numeral in the center. The tradition of moving around the stations to commemorate the Passion of Christ is attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, and extended throughout the Roman Catholic Church in the medieval period. It is most commonly done during Lent, especially on Good Friday. During the 15th and 16th centuries, the Franciscans began to build a series of outdoor shrines in Europe to duplicate their counterparts in the Holy Land. The number of stations varied between 7 and 30. 7 was common. These were usually placed often in small buildings along the approach to a church. In these, the sculptures are often approaching life-size and very elaborate. Then and today, walking the stations was and is a form of devotion, a physical form of prayer. Lutherans say that among different congregations, practices do not need to be the same. Augsburg Confession, Article 14. Traditions can be helpful, but are not mandatory. Some Protestants rejected images and icons and practices like walking the Stations of the Cross. However, this practice was maintained in many Lutheran communities, including in Latin America. The biblical way of the cross was introduced by Pope John Paul II in 1991 to provide a version of this devotion more closely aligned with the biblical accounts. You are invited to walk the Stations of the Cross on the New Life land anytime. Walk, pause, pray, meditate at your own pace. We have a Via Crucis service on Good Friday. Enjoy this virtual walk of the Stations of the Cross at New Life Lutheran Church in Dripping Springs, Texas. This is our church. First station, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Then Jesus came to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to feel sorrow and distress. Then he said to them, "My soul is sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and keep watch with me." He advanced a little and fell prostrate in prayer, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." When he had returned to his disciples, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, "So you could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray, that you may not undergo the test. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Matthew 26, 36-41. Second station, Jesus, betrayed by Judas, is arrested. Then, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, accompanied by a crowd with swords and clubs, who had come from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. His betrayers had arranged a signal with them, saying, "The man I shall kiss is the one. Arrest him and lead him away securely." He came immediately, went over to him and said, "Rabbi." Then he kissed him. At this they laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Mark 14, 43-46. Third station, Jesus is condemned by the Sanhedrin. When day came, the council of elders of the people met, both chief priests and scribes, and they brought him before their Sanhedrin. They said, "If you are the Messiah, tell us." But he replied to them, "If I tell you, you will not believe, and if I question, you will not respond. But from this time on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God. They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied to them, "You say that I am." Then they said, "What further need have we for testimony? We have heard it from his own mouth." Luke 22:66-71. The fourth station. Jesus is denied by Peter. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. One of the maids came over to him and said, "You too were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it in front of everyone, saying, "I do not know what you are talking about." As he went out to the gate, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This man was with Jesus the Nazarene." Again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." A little later, the bystanders came over and said to Peter, "Surely you too were one of them. Even your speech gives you away." At that he began to curse and swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately a cock crowed. Then Peter remembered the word that Jesus had spoken, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." He went out and began to weep bitterly. Matthew 26:69-75. The fifth station. Jesus is judged by Pilate. The chief priests with the elders and the scribes, that is the whole Sanhedrin, held a council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He said to him in reply, "You say so." The chief priests accused him of many things. Again, Pilate questioned him, "Have you no answer? See how many things they accuse you of." Jesus gave him no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas and handed Jesus over to be crucified. Mark 15:1-5 and 15. The sixth station. Jesus is scourged and crowned with thorns. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him scourged. And the soldiers wove a crown out of thorns and placed it on his head, and clothed him in a purple cloak. And they came to him and said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him repeatedly. John 19:1-3. The seventh station. Jesus bears the cross. When the chief priests and guards saw Jesus, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no guilt in him." They cried out, take him away, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, in Hebrew, Golgotha. John 19:6 and 15-17. The eighth station. Jesus is helped by Simon the Cyrenian to carry the cross. They pressed into service a passerby, Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. Mark 15:21. The ninth station. Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. A large crowd of people followed Jesus, including many women who mourned and lamented him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming when people will say, 'Blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' At that time people will say to the mountains, 'Fall upon us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if these things are done when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Luke 23:27-31. The 10th station. Jesus is crucified. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him and the criminals there, one on his right and the other on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." Luke 23:33-34. The 11th station. Jesus promises his kingdom to the good thief. Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed, we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we received corresponds to our crime, but this man has done nothing criminal." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Luke 23:39-43. The 12th station. Jesus speaks to his mother and the disciple. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple there whom he loved, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. John 19:25-27. The 13th station. Jesus dies on the cross. It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, because of an eclipse of the sun. Then the veil of the temple was torn down the middle. Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And when he had said this, he breathed his last. Luke 23:44-46. The 14th station. Jesus is placed in the tomb. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was himself a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be handed over. Taking the body, Joseph wrapped it in clean linen and laid it in his new tomb that he had hewed in the rock. Then he rolled a huge stone across the entrance to the tomb and departed. Matthew 27:57-60. This is the way of the cross. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God.